Hare Krishna. Question: is the Garga Samhita an authentic book? If yes, then why do our acharyas not quote from it? Answer: when we use the word authentic, we have to understand what we are referring to by the word authentic. Though there are Arsha Vigyamakya, it is said. Arsha is the learned seers who have spiritual vision, and their Vakya are also considered to be equivalent to Vedic authority, just as these are Smriti literature. So, in general, Smriti literature are considered equivalent to Shruti, and in fact, the Bhagavatam is considered to be the conclusion of all the Shrutis as well as Smritis. It is the final word in transcendence. It is what Vyasadeva wrote in spiritual maturity. So, if we are using authentic in the terms that whether it's Arsha Vigyamakya, yes, now Gargacharya is said to have written it, and then Gargamuni is definitely considered to be an exalted person. He is the person who gave name to Krishna. So therefore, it is valid to say that Gargamuni, that book is authentic. So now there are further considerations also. The point is that there are certain books which have been preserved in the tradition by the acharyas and certain books which have not been preserved, and in fact certain books have not been referred to also. So the points about why the Vaishnava acharyas are not referred to Garga Samhita, we don't know. They are not here for us to ask. And in general, we shouldn't assume that they had access to all the literature that were there available at that time, because at that time there was no internet data bank where you could just do a Google search. So the acharyas were at one place, and at some other place the book might have been there and it might have been unknown. So because of that, the Vaishnava acharyas, like the Goswamis, who have written a lot about the position of Krishna, establishing how Krishna is the highest absolute truth, they have not quoted the Garga Samhita. But that doesn't necessarily imply that it is invalid. The Garga Samhita does demonstratively teach in its first three chapters in one of its sections about how Krishna is the source of all the incarnations, and how all the manifestations of the absolute truth, including Vishnu, come ultimately from Krishna. So the Siddhanta which is taught in Bhagavatam, which our acharyas accept as the highest authority, which Vyasadeva has written as maturity, that same Siddhanta is demonstrated in the Garga Samhita. And also the Garga Samhita contains the Balram Sahasranam, the Yamuna Sahasranam. So these are very special devotional literature, devotional compositions which glorify the Lord the Lord and His great devotee Yamuna Devi in very special ways, sweet and special ways. So if we look at the overall content, it does seem to be, it does demonstrate the Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta well, and there's devotional glorification also. One matter of concern is that many of the pastimes that are described in Garga Samhita are described in ways that are different from the descriptions in the Bhagavatam. And that is also not necessarily a point against it, because in general the Lord performs pastimes in different ways, in different appearances. So based on Kalpa Bhed means that the pastime happened in a different yuga. Based on Kalpa Bhed, we can recognize that the Garga Samhita is referring to one Kalpa and the Bhagavatam is referring to another Kalpa. So overall, the Garga Samhita shouldn't be our primary source of authority. We can use it as a secondary source of authority. So there is Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. We have these three means by which we can understand the absolute truth. So in general, if one of them is saying something that is not contradicted by the others, then accepting it is not wrong. So in general, the epistemological standard that Jiva Goswami sets in the Tattva Sandarbha, epistemology is the way of acquiring knowledge of knowledge. So epistemological standard means how do we understand scripture. So there is Nirnayak Shastra and there is Nirnayatara Shastra. Nirnayak is that which is decisive, and Nirnayatara is that which is to be decided. So based on an extensive logical, philosophical and scriptural analysis, Jiva Goswami establishes how Srimad Bhagavatam is the Nirnayatara Shastra. Nirnayatara is that which is, is the Nirnayak Shastra, is the decisive scripture. So to the extent any other scripture agrees with the Bhagavatam, to that extent we accept it as bona fide, and to the extent it doesn't agree, to that extent, not that we reject it as malified, but we understand that it is talking about truths which are different, which may be for people in the lower modes, like say the recommendations for meat eating, the statements about meat eating that are there in certain scriptures, or it may be talking about different kalpas. So like that, the Nirnayak has to be given highest authority, and Nirnayatara can be quoted. So if some devotees object to Garva Samhita, we can accept their sentiments because it has not been quoted. So if they want to avoid quoting it, that is fine. But there is no need to make a campaign against Garva Samhita saying that it is not bona fide. If some devotees feel inspired to quote it in their classes, that is also fine. The important point is we shouldn't make that our primary authority. Our primary authority should be the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Garga Samhita can be quoted as a confirmatory secondary authority. Thank you. Hare Krishna.